Van Nuys, California, 1988. The assembly line at the Pontiac plant moves at the pace it always moves. White Trans Ams roll forward, station by station, the same way they have for years. Hoods going on, glass going in. The same Chevy V8 that has been under every Trans Am since 1982 drops into the engine bay and gets bolted down. Then a car gets pulled aside, not for an inspection, not for a recall. A man walks the car off the line and loads it onto a transport. It will travel south to a shop in Camarillo, California. When it comes back, the engine under the hood will not be the one it left with. What goes in its place will make it the fastest American production car of 1989. General Motors will make sure almost nobody knows that. The car is white. It will always be white. There will be 1,555 of them, and then there will be none. To understand what that car was, you have to understand what Pontiac had already lost. In 1980, Pontiac engineers bolted a turbocharger onto their 301 cubic inch V8 and called it the future, the Trans Am Turbo, a Pontiac engine turbocharged in a Pontiac car. The division that had built its entire identity on engineering independence was making one final argument for why that independence still mattered. The argument lasted 2 years. GM had been watching the books. Individual divisions building individual engines for individual cars was expensive. The solution was consolidation, one corporate engine family shared across divisions, efficient and logical, and for Pontiac, fatal. In 1982, the new third-generation Firebird arrived. Crisp lines, modern profile, the chassis that would carry the Trans Am for the next decade. Under the hood, a Chevrolet small block V8. The 301 was gone. Every engine Pontiac had ever built, the 389, the 400, and the 455, was canceled. The last one left in 1982. From that point forward, every Trans Am carried a Chevrolet engine in a Pontiac car. The division that had invented the muscle car now borrowed its heart from its biggest rival. That is where the story of the TTA begins. Not in 1989, in 1982, when GM took the last thing Pontiac had that was entirely its own. When the Buick Grand National ended production in 1987, it left something behind. The LC2 engine, the 3.8-liter turbocharged V6 that had made the Grand National the most feared American car of the decade. The engine that had powered the GNX to performance numbers General Motors spent 2 years pretending were not real. Buick's performance program was finished. The engine had nowhere to go. Buick offered it to Pontiac. The offer came with the transmission, the 2004 R 4-speed automatic that had handled the GNX's torque without braking. A complete drivetrain, proven, available, sitting at the end of a finished production run. All Pontiac had to do was say yes. Bill Owen said yes. Owen was the Pontiac engineer who understood what the F-body chassis could do with the right engine beneath it. He drove the prototype to the first meeting himself. The third-generation Firebird was lighter than the G-body Regal that had carried the Grand National, and it was more aerodynamic, designed from the beginning for higher sustained speeds. Where the GNX had been electronically limited to 124 miles per hour because the Regal's chassis could not safely handle more, the Trans Am had no such ceiling. Owen saw what nobody at General Motors was advertising. Buick had proved the engine. Pontiac had the chassis. The combination had never existed before. He pushed the project internally until it had a budget, a builder, and a production number. What happened next did not happen at GM. Production Automotive Services operated out of Camarillo, California. Jeff Bietzel had built the company into the kind of operation GM trusted with work it could not officially do itself. PAS had certified the Syclone, it had certified the Typhoon. When Pontiac needed someone to take a Buick engine and make it fit inside a Trans Am, Bietzel's shop was the answer. The process was not a transplant. It was a rebuild. PAS pulled white GTAs off the Van Nuys assembly line. Each one went into the shop and came out as something different. The original LC2 cylinder heads would not clear the F-body cowl. The engine bay was narrower than the Regal's. Pontiac substituted heads from the Buick 3800 Series 1. The swap allowed the exhaust to rotate cleanly through the bottom of the car. A larger intercooler replaced the GNX unit. Boost pressure was raised from 12 pounds per square inch to 16.5 pounds per square inch. The bottom end was strengthened. The GNX had been the end of something. What came out of PAS's shop was the beginning of something else. Bietzel put the engine on a dyno. The number that came back was 375 horsepower at the crank. The car that would go to dealers needed a different number. The sticker said 250 horsepower. The dyno said 375 at the crank. The 1989 Corvette was rated at 255. General Motors' unwritten rule, the one this channel has documented across 15 videos, said no General Motors car outrates the Corvette. So Pontiac rated the TTA at 250, 5 horsepower below the Corvette, just enough to obscure what they had built, and not enough to threaten what Chevrolet was selling across the lot. Bietzel offered a different account years later. The certification numbers had been kept below the transmission's warranty threshold by running hot air through the intake during dyno testing, thin air making less power on paper. Both explanations may be true, neither reflects well on the institution that required them. The number on the sticker stayed at 250. 3 white Trans Ams lined up at Indianapolis Motor Speedway on May 28, 1989. Not replicas, not pace car editions with a commemorative stripe and a dealer markup. The actual production cars pulled from the same 1,555 that were going to buyers across the country. Pontiac had been chosen to pace the Indianapolis 500 for the 20th anniversary of the Trans Am nameplate. The TTA ran the pace laps without modification. It was the first Indy pace car in the race's history fast enough to fulfill the role completely stock. Car and Driver tested a production TTA that June. 4.6 seconds to 60 miles per hour, 13.4 seconds through the quarter mile at 101 miles per hour, a top speed of 153 miles per hour, faster than the Corvette, faster than anything else wearing an American nameplate in 1989. Their conclusion about the 250 horsepower rating was 3 words: exceedingly modest. For one model year, Pontiac had the fastest production car in America. It was built from a borrowed engine, a California shop, and a chassis GM had standardized 7 years earlier to cut costs. The only American car faster in 1989 was the Callaway Corvette, a twin turbocharged conversion that cost $36,000. That was $22,000 less, in a car that looked like every other white Trans Am in the dealer lot. The sleeper principle had been built into the TTA by accident, and then enforced by policy. It looked ordinary because Pontiac could not afford to make it look otherwise. It was rated at 250 horsepower because GM needed a number that would not embarrass the Corvette program. The engineers knew what they had built. The dyno print said 375 at the crank. The 1990 Trans Am came with a V8, not a turbo, not the 3.8-liter V6, a naturally aspirated Chevrolet 5.8, the same corporate engine that had been under the hood of every Trans Am since 1982. The TTA was gone. No announcement, no press conference, no executive on record saying the program was finished. Pontiac asked about continuing. The answer was no. The specific conversation has never been formally documented. What is documented is the pattern. The Fiero canceled at the moment it finally worked. The GNX ended after 1 year of peak performance. The Syclone proved an entire performance truck market existed, and General Motors walked away. Now the fastest Trans Am ever built lasted 1 model year and 1,555 units before the line went cold. The chassis was still there. The engine existed. PAS was still in California. General Motors said no anyway. Bill Owen understood what the F-body chassis could do with the right engine. Jeff Bietzel built the proof in California and put the dyno number on paper. Car and Driver tested it and called the horsepower rating exceedingly modest. The car lapped Indianapolis Motor Speedway at race speed without modification. General Motors rated it at 250 horsepower, ran it for one model year, and never offered it again. Somewhere in a collection there is a white Trans Am with tan interior and gold wheels. That was the fastest American production car of its moment. It looks like nothing. That was the point. General Motors made sure of it. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one.